Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Action Sports Network Conversation Space. I am Alba Pardo, and today we're speaking with Kimmy Fasani. Kimmy Fasani has been a professional snowboarder for over 20 years. She has always pushed the female snowboarding scene, not by only achieving tricks never done before, like when she was the first woman to land a double backflip in the snowpark and in the backcountry back in 2011, but also by pushing the limits everywhere she could. She was one of the only women to film with Absinthe Films, and she earned her parts in male-dominated crews and movies, like the one in Standard Films movie 2012, where her and Anne Fleur were the only female writers featured. But she also stood up for equality and progression, hosting events like Amusement Park and Amusement Mountain, which were events to help expedite women's learning curve and progression in snowboarding. In 2017, she won the Snowboarders Woman Rider of the Year award, and after that, in March 2018, she became a mum. Then and there, she did another huge step advocating for equality when she announced that she was planning to continue her career as a professional athlete and had negotiated the terms with her main sponsor, Burton Snowboards, to not only support her through this journey, but put policies in place to allow others to do the same in the future. If you don't think this is an inspiring life story just yet, let me tell you how in 2019, just a few months after her having her second baby Zeppelin, Kimmy was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive inflammatory breast cancer. She underwent 10 months of treatment, including 6 rounds of chemotherapy, a double mastectomy, and 30 rounds of radiation. As of now, Kimmy has had a complete pathological response to chemo and surgery, so she is cancer-free. Throughout this difficult journey, Kimmy has shared her experience very openly on her social media channels and has become an inspiration and source of strength and hope for many. Today, I have the pleasure to sit down to talk to her about her journey, her choice to go public on these challenging times, and the things to come. We get real and dig into uncomfortable topics and hard moments. But if there's one thing I can tell you is that Kimmy is no stranger to discomfort and nor scared to embrace it. She sheds hope and positivity like I have only seen few people do. So I can't wait for you to listen to this conversation because it is a good one. So without further ado, please welcome Kimmy Fasani. Hello, Kimmy. How are you? Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for wanting to share this story.
Where are you today?
I am back in Mammoth Lakes. It's beautiful and it's fall, and it's really nice to be back in the mountains.
I mean, I think the question I want to ask and everybody wants to ask is, how are you?
It's such it's been such a whirlwind of emotions and just peaks and valleys that I've been through that I feel like I'm coming out of the fog and I feel like I'm actually able to put my feet on the ground and kind of see where I'm at. And I feel like I'm doing pretty good. I definitely go through ups and downs, just emotions and trying to process what happened so quickly. But I'm really excited that winter's approaching because spending time outside and watching it snow is always a really great way for me to just kind of find my peace again.
That's amazing to hear. I mean, as I was telling you earlier, I have so many questions to ask you, not just about this last year and your journey through fighting cancer, but and many other things. But I feel like the biggest or the most recent topic is kind of like what's kind of staring at us in the face, and it's a scary bit. And this month being the cancer awareness month as well, I feel like we just want to dive into it. And with your recent video as well, kind of telling a bit more the story behind it, um, there were a few things I was trying to think about this conversation. So how should I structure this, right? And to make some sense of it. And there were a few things that really spoke to me. And so I'm going to divide this conversation or this block of the conversation with things you said in the video. So one of the things that really spoke to me was like the being healthy and active didn't prevent you from getting sick, but actually to be a better patient. How?
That is a great question. And it was something I actually really struggled with upon my diagnosis. I was so confused and almost embarrassed because I've been an ambassador for Boarding for Breast Cancer for so many years. I really felt like I've been an advocate for my body and awareness and just living a healthy and active lifestyle. And especially watching both my parents go through cancer, I was really trying to avoid the lifestyle that they might have had to add to the complexity of our bodies not being as healthy as possible. And it was actually my surgeon, my doctor. I was talking to her pretty candidly, and she said, look, like living a healthy and active lifestyle, number one, most important thing you can do, because not only are you going to be healthy physically, mentally, you're going to be stronger. But if you do have to go through treatment, you're going to be so much stronger. Your body's going to have more endurance and more resilience. And that really made such an impact on my mental space because I was not so hard on myself. I tried to take some of the guilt away by knowing that. It doesn't really matter who we are or what we do. Cancer or hardship can happen, but it's really, really important to take care of ourselves because we're going to have more resilience to get through these hard times when we're mentally and physically in tune with our body.
Yeah, and also kind of like the emotions aspect of it and the awareness. You also touch upon the story of how boarding for breast cancer at a very young age impacted you and kind of kept that memory really alive in your head. And it made me think about the awareness in the same sense of like, okay, how am I a better patient? Uh, and I can't help but think like being an athlete, you also know better your body. So the thing is that something is not right, probably kind of transpires a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And because I was breastfeeding, I thought that there was a lot of changes happening in my breast that I couldn't quite identify. And every body is so different, and every person has such different experiences that I I was listening to my body, and it was definitely heightening some awareness that something was going on. But I was able to dismantle that thought process by just blaming my breastfeeding journey. And not until when I felt under my arm in my right armpit and I felt like a very significant hard bump, which is what reminded me of like feeling the boobs, the fake boobs on the Boarding for Breast Cancer table. I was like, oh my gosh, like I put the dots together and I was like, I definitely should call my doctor because this isn't normal. This isn't something I've felt before. And having that baseline is ultimately what drove me to go get checked.
That preparedness, it reminds me when you're in the mountain and something bad happens, there's an accident, there's an avalanche, you hear something that's not quite right. Um, and the first step is always like, no, this is not happening. This can be happening to us, to me. How do you take those lessons learned from that kind of negation of what's happening from in the sport in the mountain and to into your personal life, and in this case in the diagnosis?
I love your comparison right there because so much of this experience for me has been how I related to the mountains and my experiences in the mountains and taking the tools that I've had of overcoming or like harnessing my power or really like engaging with those emotions, those big feelings that we have out there. And uh, I really felt like the only way that I could come out of this was to share the knowledge because I felt somewhat blind in my own skin to uh, breast cancer or cancer in general. I ruled myself out before all of this, that I would not be somebody that had cancer. And being faced with it showed me that maybe there were opportunities for other people to realize like that we just have to have that awareness because when these things happen, you have to be able to dig into that intuition the same way you do in the mountains and go, okay, it might not be the most convenient. It's definitely not what I expected, but I had to put my head down, develop a team of doctors, and just fight to live. And same way when you're in the mountains, if like an avalanche happens or something, it's like not what you expect, but you have to find your way out. You have to have all of that knowledge and that preparedness from your avalanche courses or whatever to just go to work, and if somebody else is buried, you're going to save them. Or in this case, for me, I was the one that was in need of help. So I had to put everything forward and just go through the treatment and know that hopefully I would come back on the outside winning, but you don't know unless you put all of your energy out there.
Asking for help. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Especially being a strong leader, a woman, that does risky things, asking for help. How did that look for you?
That's also been another very big learning lesson that I've gone through. I'm a very independent, calculated risk taker, I guess. I love being able to trust myself, and I found a lot of progression that way. I do feel like so much of what we do in the mountains is reliant on the team of people you have around you, and you want people who are going to be uplifting and supportive and encouraging and can also just be with you. And that's what I really found through this process was finding that team of people that I knew were going to have like all the support, all the encouragement, and also the ability to just listen and help me process and really cutting out all of the noise and the distractions and just focusing on one day at a time, getting through the treatment, knowing that it was going to be challenging, but it's also temporary. And I really viewed this process as like life and seasons, right? Like you go through these seasons of life and seasons of the in nature where things die and then they bloom and you come back into full life, and just trying to really have those visuals of myself and trying to focus on the good things most of the time. It was most of the time there was just a lot of challenges mentally I had to face and be like, it's okay. It's okay to feel like these big feelings.
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, just being comfortable in my skin and knowing that I had a group of people around me that were really there to just support me through the process.
Yeah. You kind of touched on it earlier, but you brought up the sharing your experience, your story. And in the video you say something like sharing as a survival technique. Now, when you started, you get the diagnosis and you decide, oh, I'm going to share this on social and with the world. At that moment, did you do it for you or for helping or inspire everybody else? So that's what you thought.
You know, admittedly, I waited 3 weeks before I told the world. I had to go through a process of trying to figure out like how I was going to go through treatment. I really wanted to have a lot of answers, or at least the game plan. And I think anybody who's been through breast cancer or these scary health diagnoses can relate. It's like you want to kind of have a basis of information before you put it out there. But I felt like there was so much that I learned, and I really felt that there was a way that I could share it that would also be healing for me, because I felt like I was going to be communicating to an audience of people who may have gone through this prior to me. And in a way, it's like I want to help expedite the learning curve for anybody that's just entering this phase. And there was also people on the other side of it that were helping to expedite my learning curve. And I really feel like the same way that I've given back in snowboarding through different events and trying to help women really progress in their own learning curves, I felt like this was just another avenue to be transparent and show that we're not invincible. I'm a professional athlete, but it still doesn't make it any easier for me to go through this. And I wanted it to be as honest and heartfelt as possible. And as I would go through the journey and I had things to say, I did. It was selfishly healing for me as well. It was really a cathartic experience writing about these moments that were extremely impactful. And then also just to see people's engagement and their storytelling and their experiences, I feel like it creates a healthier social experience on social media. And it's painted to be so perfect all the time that I really wanted to be able to connect to people on a deeper level.
Mm, yeah, that's interesting. Also, because we often talk about community, right? And sometimes I wonder, is social media really a community, or it's kind of like a curated form of it, right? Because if you post something like this on social media, you kind of expect people to be sympathetic and to share, positive thoughts with you or their stories. And I feel like the hardest part is probably sharing it with your closer circle, the people that actually are going to be there with you through the whole process. So what do you think, or how did you feel that difference? Like, um did you see that? Did you feel like at some point, because like reading through everything, I mean, I've been following you for quite a long time, but through this journey it was like, oh, it's shit, but it's okay. That's kind of what I got from your stories. Like, it's really shit, it doesn't feel good, like this is hard, even harder than I thought it would be, but at the end of the day, like, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, is it possible that sometimes you just don't, and it's just shit, period?
Of course. And I guess on two aspects of the question is, one is when you share something, it's a lot easier for people's response through a screen to just be like, I mean, I'm guilty of it, like heart emoji, prayer hands, you're so strong, you're so inspiring. And then when you have to sit in a room with your friends and I'm bawling my eyes out because I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin, their words are so defining and so monumental, in your recovery. So I do feel like there's two boundaries, because the people that are engaging with what I'm sharing on social media also do care, and they're spending enough time to read through the post to actually engage with it, where hopefully it's making a slight impact on how they will connect with their friend who's now going through cancer, or their mom or their dad, and they'll have a little bit more compassion or empathy to what it actually might feel like if these people can't share how that feeling is. But it's a lot easier through a screen to communicate with people, because you're not actually having to see them and feel the emotion, and I also did really have to harness the light in every experience that I was feeling so down in, because it's very easy to sit in a dark space and find the pity and the sorrow, and you get lost in it, and that's when depression happens. And if we don't find our light and our that way to like uplift ourselves, it's a scary place. And I when I would feel really empty or alone, I would walk outside and I would spend time just like sitting in the sun, soaking up the sun. And just that solar power seemed to give me energy. And not that it's for everybody, but I do feel like there's a really healing sense of nature and what it can do for us and our peace of mind. And that's that was my pull through my recovery and my treatment was, okay, if I'm feeling really down, maybe go for a 5-minute walk and just feel the energy of being outside and knowing that our thoughts don't define us. Our thoughts can be really scary and degrading, but if we step outside and we see how little we are in the biggest world, surrounded by mountains or nature or ocean, it's healing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like through these fights and through these processes, we often get lost in discussing the physical treatments and the everything that you've gone through physically, and how much support you've got and this and that. But we often don't talk about the work you have to do on your mental health. And in this case, what that looked like for you. Did you also have a more structured way to deal with it, or you just kind of managed it on your own?
Kind of like we were talking about at the beginning, I have so many tools from being in the mountains that at the time when I was diagnosed, I knew like it was time to go to work. It was time to put my head down and climb this mountain. And it was going to be hard. It was going to be strenuous. I would probably cry. I would be challenged. I would feel completely depleted by the time I got to the top. But hopefully, that work and that energy of putting everything into it and getting to the top would make it so that I could survive. And it it's been a struggle mentally. I think it's important for people to know, like, mental health is really it's important to focus on, and talking to people about our feelings and knowing that we're not alone, like it's so easy to just say, oh yeah, I made it through and I survived and it was pretty easy because I'm such a great athlete. But that wasn't the case for me. And I still am mentally trying to process what I've been through. And it's it's really the growth that we go through and the pace of the growth that we go through in life that's inspiring and also so hard. It's like, if we have two ways of looking at all of these challenges. It's like, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? Or can we shift it and say, why, how can I grow through this? Like, what am I supposed to learn through this? How am I supposed to better myself? What type of experience do I want to uh, see as I come through this? How am I going to make more of an impact? How are my actions going to be different? How am I going to have a different view on life? And those are hard questions when you feel really sorry for yourself. And yet they also pull the focus. And for me, it was like trying to zoom out on like the bigger picture of, all right, I've done hard things. This is just another one of those. And applying everything that I've learned from injuries and mountains and becoming a mom, like it all compiles, and our life can really seamlessly lend itself to growth if we want to choose to see it that way. And even in the hardest moments, there is always light. There's always a silver lining from these experiences. And that's why I'm so incredibly grateful that Burton chose to not only support me through this journey and help me find the mountains going to Baldface, um, but also they've been a catalyst in just helping to make an impact. And they did it as I entered motherhood, and they did it over and over and again. And now with this campaign, I feel like they're not only speaking the snowboard language, they're speaking to a massive audience of people who can relate to what cancer looks like. And now they're actually reminding people how important it is to check themselves. So just having the support system that I do has really allowed me to kind of have those perspective changes in the hardest mental times.
Yeah. So many things to unpack in just this answer. I mean, from, like the audience, it's not an audience, it's humans. And they're appealing to that with all of this, but also the impact, the nature of the community. Like, of course, now, I mean, I wasn't really surprised to see that you're starting a foundation throughout this journey, because you've always been very involved in causes like for boarding, for breast cancer. Like you've always throughout your career been involved in many places. So when I see, oh, they're starting a foundation, to help people through the outdoors, like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's kind of like helping others to build this toolbox that you've been so lucky to have built through the years and with your community. So tell me a bit more about the foundation and what you're envisioning and what your goals are.
Yeah. So the Fasani Foundation was really a concept that my husband and I had talked about as we were building our will, like our trust as we were having kids. And we've always really been inspired by the outdoors and nature and how healing it can be. Losing both parents for myself, I always ran to the mountains as my way of healing. And I feel like you just are put in a perspective of realizing that there's so much more in the world than our suffering, and there's a way to connect with nature in a way that really helps uplift us and give us endorphins and makes us feel so much more connected and grounded. And my husband as well, he lost his dad, and same thing. Like maybe that's why we both pursued sport, because we found such a peaceful space in the outdoors. And when I was diagnosed, my husband really felt that it was time. And I think there was parts of me that were not ready because I was going through my own challenges mentally, but having him see like the opportunity of really using the resources. We had so many resources and such an incredible community come forward to support us. And knowing that we can use those resources and help pay it forward to other people that might not have those resources. And it's like when I was sitting in the doctor's offices, the nurses were so incredible, and they would ask me about my support system. It's part of diagnostic testing now of
Mm.
human interaction is like, do these people have a support system? And if not, those nurses will be that support system, because as a patient, you need the support to feel like you do have the strength. And that's what we want to really create through this foundation is we want people to know like we're here for you and your hardship matters. And we also want to show you how healing, being outside and connecting to yourself, and connecting to that deeper sense of life. And I'm really excited because it's been received really well. People are really excited, but I'm just really, really inspired to make our first impact. I would love to be able to bring as many people as I can that have been through hard things out into the mountains or out into their space of nature that inspires them the most, so that we can help build their strength. And then hopefully that ripple effect will help their families, and it will spread to a wider range of people.
Mm. So you talk about, the responses and how people kind of get excited about it and how they reached out to you. Um, is all of this what you would have expected, all this response? And would you share it again?
Yeah. There's I guess snowboarding for me has always been such a deep rooted passion, and I always felt like the snowboarding part is what was going to be my defining moments in my
Mm.
career. And what I've really learned is, obviously it's been a huge foundation and I love snowboarding so much, but in using my voice to speak about things that are important to me that may be important to other people, I see that there's a lot bigger way to connect. And I would 100% share my story again, because I have seen such a positive response. And it's not just the response, but it's also the hope. And I think for me, watching some, if I could have put myself, like if I could have watched myself go
Yeah.
through this, um, it would have just given me so much hope at the beginning, knowing like what it looked like to actually go through this. And I feel like it's a really hard space to share, because it's a really humbling and it's vulnerable and you're exposed, and the isolation is somewhat haunting. And so I guess, yes, I would love to continue to share these experiences, because I do feel like it helps to normalize life and the hard moments that we go through. And then with the foundation, I just feel like such there's so many of us, maybe all of us, you know, longing for that deeper connection. And life is really about like these defining moments of bringing our character out. And those challenging moments really force us to face ourselves. And I feel like when I'm out in nature, I can truly face myself and I can hear myself think and I can let go of my thoughts, because there's a lot more space to process the challenges. And I feel like nature is so forgiving. You could stand in the woods and scream at the top of your lungs, and somehow it absorbs that and it releases the energy in a positive way. And so I'm hoping that that's just like, as we get into opening up this foundation and as I go through my healing process, I just hope that other people can really see all of the benefits from sharing our experiences to also just spending more time undistracted in nature.
Yeah. I love how hope transpires through you, but also in a way that it's like, hey, you don't have to go out in the nature and climb the Everest, like you can just be outside for 5 minutes, soak up the sun, and that's going to benefit you and your healing process. And I think sometimes we forget to be like, no, if I don't go out and do like a 10K walk, it's not gonna do a difference. And that's not true. It does. Um, One thing though, I'm gonna make you feel a bit uncomfortable now because otherwise it wouldn't be me. But you talking about normalize these situations and going the outdoors. You also are very honest at bringing up how many resources you have around you through the network you've built. But in the video, there was this moment that I cringed a little bit when you say, it feels like normal life again or something like this, and it's an image you're flying in the helicopter with your kids, because you say like it feels normal again. I'm like, gosh, like how many people to get to go snowboarding in a helicopter with their kids? Like that doesn't feel normal to me. But then that kind of brings out that superhero moment of like, no, I'm a badass, I'm fighting all of this and I'm just here to inspire you. um if you zoom out a little bit and look from the outside in again, if you were looking yourself from the outside, how would you interpret this scene?
That's it's awesome that you bring that up. And I think it is important for people to recognize, like, we live a very privileged life, and we have been fortunate to have the outlet to access the mountains in the way we have. And in order to get to Baldface, you fly on a helicopter to get there. And that's part of the package of the specialness of going to that spot. It really does. It's so close to this little town, Nelson, in British Columbia. And it's part of the experience. And uh, obviously, having our whole family there, we've been there multiple times, and it's such a gift. And I also, when I saw that part of the film, it's not necessarily relatable to everybody, but in what we have done in our careers, it did allow us as a family to get to this lodge in a really short time frame. And as I said, it's so incredibly privileged, but it was also so incredible to have the support of the owner of Baldface and the owner of Burton, like Donna, offer their resources, right, to us to encourage our healing. And that's what's so inspiring to me, is like so many incredible people came forward that have more opportunities than I have, and said, hey, we want to create an experience for you. And that's where we want to turn those resources now that we have been given and say, hey, we want to encourage other people to have these types of experiences in whatever form it looks like. And not that everybody's going to be able to fly on a helicopter or access the mountains in that way, but to us, that's like it was a really special way that our community gave back to us. And I want to be able to provide whatever type of experience we can to help other people feel that special, to feel that unique moment where they're like, oh my gosh, I've never done something like this, or I never knew that this was even an option. And that is inspiring, and that helps you heal, and that makes you feel more resilient and more capable and more confident. And going on that trip to Baldface completely transformed my mental space, because I had not been able to leave the house after my chemo treatment for almost a week, because I had such horrible gut problems where I had to be very close to a bathroom. And so going on that trip, there was so much that had to align in order for me to be able to even be on an airplane or be on the helicopter for that long, because like I had to have a bathroom. But for some reason, my body was like so excited and so in where it needed to be and connected to its power source that I was able to show up and be my truest self. And that was such an uplifting moment, especially going into my double mastectomy surgery and then radiation. I needed to be reconnected with myself so that I knew I still had power and energy to put forward, because ultimately that is what makes you survive. You know, I, you get to these points where you're so close to giving up, but when people believe in you, you realize that you have more power than you think you do, because you have their power. And something I also wanted to say about like sharing through social media, that my friend and I were talking about recently, was my sharing. It was a form, like I was saying, it was so healing for me to also put out how I was going through this process, but it also, having that network of people around helped shared the weight of what I was going through. So me putting it out there allowed it to not just be on my shoulders. And it almost created this like spiderweb effect where other people were able to help hold us up and give us the power to get through it.
Absolutely. Again, I think that at the end of it, of the whole equation, it's that hope and that resiliency. Also, now I just thought about it, but of course, I mean, as an athlete, that you've always looked at your body, looked after it, like it's been your tool. It's been your way to earn money. It's been your way to carve a career and kind of live through this world. And now it changes, not only because you've been sick and you've recovered, but also it actually changes with a double mastectomy. How, and for a woman, that's like a big part of, sadly, of who we are, right? Like that's how we see ourselves a lot of the time. So how does that have affected you, and how is that um, processing that change going?
Yeah, going into surgery was a really emotional roller coaster just because I mean I have two little boys. I have a son obviously and I or two sons and I'm married. So there's like this side of you that's like, "Oh my gosh, my doctors were my I absolutely love my team of doctors and they were pretty encouraging of not doing reconstruction because of the type of cancer I have. They just don't want anything hiding." And I got to a point where I just didn't want my body, my outer, how I looked to have to define me. And I wanted to be able to let go of that thought process so that it wasn't something I was having to grieve, even though obviously it is. It's a grieving process. You know, you're changing, you're from
You're
shaving my
losing
head,
something.
yeah, like shaving my head and losing my boobs and going through this transformation has definitely been a transformation. And I it's it's easy some days and it's challenging others. And at the same time, I just have tried to face it with courage, knowing that the outer shell doesn't really matter. You know, my power comes from inside. It's the drive, it's the motivation, it's the strength that my muscles and my body can create. Um, it's that connection to what I've always done and trying to pull all of that in to remind myself when I look in the mirror and I feel so different. And maybe that's part of the reason that this campaign also was really impactful, not just to the outer community, but to myself, because I had to face it. I had to face myself and I had to be okay with what I look like. But I also wanted to drop that veil so that other people weren't curious. Like, I want to show you so that when you see me, you're not wondering. And I think that's my own insecurity. But there were definitely moments in going through this where that curiosity is there. Like other people would see me and I'm pushing a stroller and I'm flat chested and I have a shaved head. And it was almost me trying to help them, like help them define who I was. And
Yeah, I find that, of course, with friends or family that have gone through some kind of process like this, the thing that gets to them the most is always the pity, or the way people approach them, talk to them, and kind of how even years after they still don't know how to behave around them, or how to bring up the topic or ask the questions that they're really curious about, not because of the morbosity, just the caring, right? And that's something that I appreciate you doing, because it kind of breaks that barrier, and it's like, it is okay for you to ask. It is okay for you to look. It is okay for you to know that this is what it is.
exactly. And I felt like that was a big part for me too, because it made it so that I could put it out there and then I
Yeah.
didn't have to ask in intimate conversations over and over and over.
Yeah.
Obviously, I would still,
Yeah.
but this
And you
way,
will.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it starts to create this bigger conversation, and it just provides a different platform of understanding.
Mm. And kind of to close off this topic, and I think it kind of comes there quite naturally, how, as a public figure, in a way, how do you think, because for me, again, what I was saying now of like, oh, I don't want to be approached that way, or I don't want to feel like people aren't comfortable around me. Like you, cancer doesn't define you. It doesn't make you who you are. Sure, it's been a part of your life, but you know, how are you gonna manage? And I think that's what you're doing, but like you don't want to be that snowboarder that had cancer, right? Like you don't want to be remembered for this for the rest of your life. How do you approach this to even bring it in a conversation?
Yeah, I love the depth of that question because it's really challenging. But yet I think so much of what we do through our life can define us for moments and for moments of impact. And I just hope that people can look at what I've done on my snowboard and then my advocacy for women, for equality, for motherhood, and now for health, mental health and cancer, whatever. I hope that it's just moments of impact that people can remember me as, and also see that my connection to my snowboard is what ultimately drives my desire to live. And I hope that this moment is talked about because I think it's really important. The same way the other things that I've spoke up about. I think it's important for moms to feel like they have a place in this sport. I feel like it's important for people to realize that a cancer diagnosis is scary and it's ongoing. It's not, I am cancer free now, but it's something that's going to be heavily monitored for the rest of my life. And so it is something that I will be going through, and it will forever change who I am the same way the other moments have as well. And yet I hope that I can step back onto my snowboard and have some of it dissolve into a conversation of just being present and living life to the fullest and trying to make every moment count and matter. And that sounds cliche sometimes, but this one is, it's different. We all have these really big hurdles to go through in life, and understanding that they are just hurdles and that they can be in our past and we can move on and we can find greater strength and resilience through them.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's great the way you tie it up with motherhood because that's kind of where I wanted to go next. I feel like cancer almost got in the way of you advocating for female snowboarding and motherhood as an athlete, as a snowboarder, right? Like it's kind of and that's something that it's not going away either for the rest of our lives. Like when you're a mother, you're a mother, period. And now cancer kind of just got in the way of your work doing all of that. I mean, just to give you a bit of context, I my daughter Pia, she's like I think a month older than Koa. Like when you said you were like I was pregnant too, and so it was very relatable for me the story. And even though I'm not a professional athlete, like I've been in snowboarding for as long as I can remember, and I've always been in the circuit and stuff. So it was really cool to see other snowboarders roughly my age who were becoming mothers as well, because you don't have that many role models to look up and be like, oh no, there's snowboarding too. And they plan to continue snowboarding. And when again, Burton did a campaign about how you decided to keep your professional career as an athlete and that they would support you through that and through motherhood. I was like, yeah, because for a long time I was thinking about the transition, right? Like you're, and especially in action sports, that it feels like it's for younger, they're high risk, high impact. The consequences are really big. So it feels like it's for young people, for people that don't have families, for people that don't really look into the future so much. So there's a few guys that are dads now, but there aren't really many women that are still active as professionals. And so that was a really impactful moment. And I was really looking forward. And I love following all the developments on that and your journey, from the logistics to dealing with, for me, a big moment was, okay, redefining myself. And so like the thing I struggled, like, I don't want to give up who I am. I don't want to give up snowboarding. I don't want to give up what makes me happy. Yet to do it with Bia on my back is hard. So how have you lived that, and how has that empowered you so far? I mean, it's been 5 years almost. Can you believe it?
I know, and it's an evolution. I feel like the beauty of going into pregnancy and all the thought processes of everything you want to harness is it's beautiful because it's a catalyst and you set standards and expectations for yourself. And what I've really learned is, I mean, with Koa, we traveled the world. We were in 7 countries in um, 1 year, and it was crazy and overwhelming and exhausting. And yet I felt like I had a lot to live up to. I fought for my career and I wanted to prove it to myself and my sponsors and to everybody following that I could do it the same way I saw other athletes doing it. And what I realized after that year was the mountains are really far away. The mountains are not a track or a tennis court or even beaches for surfing, where I was really mirroring my experience against these other professional athlete women that had done it well or looked like it from the outside, that they had figured out how to manage it. For myself, I realized that there were certain environments that were really inviting for families, and I needed my kids close to me. So, I one of the most inspiring trips I went on was actually to the Arctic Ocean, which is so far away. And we were on a sailboat in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. It was a Burton campaign, Burton spring shoot that we went on. And my husband and Koa at 13 months came on this sailboat with me so that I could do this campaign. And it was the most incredible trip because the boat is at the bottom of every single line we were riding in the mountains. And so Koa was very close, even though we were so isolated in the middle of nowhere. I felt the most connected to myself and my snowboard because he was close. And I think that that's the thing that I have learned through this process is it's an evolution, and I don't have to be who I was 5 years ago on my snowboard because I'm not. And as a mother, you adapt and you grow, and you really have to acknowledge your growth and who you are and who you want to be for your child. And I want to be able to raise my child and I want to be able to share these experiences with them in the mountains. And I find it really inspiring to help show other parents like the struggles because it's hard to get your kids to the mountains and all the gear. And yet it's so rewarding going one run, or having them giggle while you have them in the backpack or in the front carrier or um, I think there's also like that confidence building moment where like you taking your daughter to the mountains, like it's really inspiring to know like I did it. Oh my gosh, like I can do this. And I'm hoping that the industry also sees that as not defining us as who we are in our height of progression singularly, but in motherhood there's a process and a growth that's also really important to um, champion, and encouraging families to be in the mountains is really important.
Do you think at some point, though, you had to prove yourself even more so than to prove to others that you could do it?
Yeah, and admittedly, I still am chasing that. I I have so much that I still want to accomplish as an athlete, and it's because I'm passionate about my career. I'm passionate about the mountains. I'm passionate about progression and women's progression. And yet I see that I have a different place, and that's awesome. I'm
Do
it's
you
where
ever, I mean, do you ever wonder why there isn't other snowboarder women that have really tried to do this in a similar way to keep their uh, professional career in snowboarding whilst becoming mothers? Do you think it's? I mean, okay, let's rewind. You're pregnant. It's time to tell Burton. Okay, this is happening. Luckily, I mean, Donna is like one of the best role models I could think of in this situation. Um, but what did you feel back then? Like, were you nervous to share that with them? Because I mean, I'm not sure about your contracts or your commitments as an athlete, but I am sure that there's things that you couldn't do or you couldn't do in the same way. Um, so how do you approach this moment of like, hey, I'm pregnant and this is changing and you need to support me through this?
Yeah, and I was so nervous. I was so nervous that what I was fighting for, I didn't know if I could accomplish. I didn't know if I could make it happen, but I just didn't want to give up. I didn't want to say, I'm going to start a family and I know I have to retire. I didn't want to admit that because I didn't feel like that was true to me. And I also had felt like we had gone through these growth spurts within the sport of snowboarding where at one point women were having to lie about their age because they weren't being accepted, or they were scared that their career would end because they were too old, you know? And we've gone through a lot of those changes where we've had to kind of own who we are and our progression and believe in ourselves and push past these boundaries and break down these glass ceilings of feeling like there are limits. There aren't. And progression, like Zoe is showing, that progression is something that is um, unlimitable. Like we do not have to limit ourselves to a status quo. And that was with parenting for me. I really wanted to be a parent, but I was just coming off a very high point of my career, and I had also lost my mom. So I was like channeling all this energy and trying to find where my place was, but also just trying to stand up for something that I felt like was really important to me that might be important to other people. And the women that I saw do it prior chose to retire or chose to tell their sponsors, and maybe that canceled their contracts. And I just didn't feel like that was right. And so trying to speak about it in a way with Donna that would really advocate for change and kind of show the rest of us like there doesn't have to be an end. And really helping that conversation was watching men do it in the same way, and yet their bodies aren't going through the transformation. So there's a lot more leniency on what they need in their contracts to support them through this process. But I am really inspired because there have been a lot more women that are now going through pregnancy and having babies, like Leanne Pelosi. And from the ski side, there's like Lindsay Dyer and Ingrid Backstrom and Hillary Nelson. You know, she was a catalyst for this. She really fought for us um, to be able to be moms and be passionate and pursue your love and passion for the mountains. And I think it's also important that we acknowledge that men, it's not easy for them to leave their babies at home. I think it's important that contracts also speak for them and having some kind of paternity support as well as maternity support, you know, because
Yeah.
together we're trying to get out into the mountains.
So looking into the future, right? Like as a snowboard as a sport, like when do you see an athletic or like a professional career ending or the transition? Like how do you think the industry or the community should evolve in this sense? Besides, of course, we're talking about parenthood now, but like even beyond that, when do you think, like how long do you think it's acceptable to consider yourself a pro? Or like do you think you can give to the brands, to the community, to your sponsors effectively, um for how long and in what capacity? And I don't know, what's your take on it? Is something that I always think about in the transitions. And because sometimes we get really focused on performance, which is of course important, but also there's other aspects to the sport, especially in lifestyle sports like ours. So what's your take on it?
I love that. I think that there's a beautiful way of breaking down this bias that we have of that there has to be a time frame, that there has to be an age limit, that there has to be a boundary of when we quit or when is too old, or um, even having my second child, it was like, oh, well, she had one, we'll support one, but will we support her having two? And I think that it's a beautiful dance. You know, it's a dance with our own questioning ourselves and being able to push past these boundaries. Like, is my value higher now because of my advocacy than it was when I was on a snowboard? Like, am I driving more sales if that's why sponsors have me? Is there more of a desire to have me part of their brand now because they know that there is a different relatable aspect because I'm a mother and I can speak to the people that are going out to buy products? If I'm a marketing tool, I would say, yeah, I think that there's more value in what I'm doing now because of the foundation I've created in snowboarding. And so I don't think that there should be a time limit. I think that that should be able to um, be a full experience, and every person has a unique gift to bring to this sport. And there shouldn't be a limitation. Just because we have seen one thing, just because somebody has seen me be a mom one way, doesn't mean that it's the right way or the only way. And I think that's a beautiful dance that we get to do through life. You know, it's progression happens on a snowboard and in life by watching other people lead the way. And there's going to be somebody that can take that candle and run with it a lot further than I can.
I love that vision of like, well, I can still be involved. It just kind of give different value, which is still very valuable. Because I think that can really transform the way we look at the industry and the way we look at ambassadors and the way we look at athletes evolving in the sport and the culture and giving back. So I think that's really cool. I am mindful of your time, and but I have just like short questions to kind of wrap things up. Um, and I feel like they kind of transcend through all the stages, from your pushing into the sport to motherhood to the cancer fight and everything else beyond that. Um, Fill in the blank for me. Success is.
Living life to the fullest. It's trying to find your happiness. It's being okay in your body and, finding that value that makes you the most peaceful and calm and radiant.
Was it the same 5 years ago?
Success at that point was finding the highest progression I could within myself and on my snowboard. I wanted to be standing at the highest peaks and conquering these calculated risks of making it down. And I think as life progresses, so do our goals and our aspirations, and that view of success can totally transform.
Mm, so good. What skill from the sport that you never thought would be transferable anywhere else has been extremely helpful in your life?
Visualization. Uh,
Wow.
I found visualization through my whole snowboarding career to be so powerful, and it's ongoing. And through going through motherhood, going through cancer, the power of visualizing and actually harnessing your mind and helping to let go of thoughts that are unsettling is so incredibly useful. And so that tool has definitely transcended through my whole life.
I understand now. My coach is no, visualize you doing a 180. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Right. So what advice were you given as a mother that was so good that you want to pass it on, or so bad that you want to warn other mothers to ignore it completely?
The good advice that I got was while I was pregnant, somebody told me book a trip for when your baby's 3 months old. And I found that that was so awesome because I had so many hopes and aspirations and dreams and expectations that when I was pregnant, I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. Like, we're going to travel. It's going to be great. It's going to be so easy. So we booked a trip. We went to Costa Rica. And packing for that trip was so overwhelming with a 3 month old. And yet, having that trip like booked made us go. And it forced us outside our house and it forced us outside our comfort zone. And it also helped us overpack and realize, like, okay, it's kind of going to be a shit show, but it's totally manageable. And you start to realize that you can travel and you start to get in this habit of like leaving and going. And to me, as a new mom, that was definitely the most challenging part, was just leaving the house. As soon as I left the house, it was a lot easier. But preparing, it's like you felt like you had to have so much stuff. So that was a great piece of advice. The thing that I felt was really inhibiting was everybody sharing their struggles and challenges, which is relatable. And yet I felt like there were great tools that I learned along the way, that everybody's experience is so different. And they want to lay it on you like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing. This is the worst thing. And really creating a boundary and allowing your space so that you can have your own experiences and you don't feel limited by everybody else's beliefs or experiences that might inhibit your ability to live your life the way you feel like is most intentional.
I completely agree. Just do whatever you want to do and feel it the way you want to feel it. I completely
Because there's
agree.
always going to be judgmental. Like, we were snowboarding with our littlest, or with Koa, at 5 months old, and people are like, oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. And it can be crazy. And this is, I think, an important thing. Like everybody holds fear differently. I'm very comfortable on my snowboard. And so I snowboarded pregnant through my pregnancy. That's not for everybody. It was right for me. Some people run through their pregnancy. That wasn't right for me. My body didn't like that. So I think really owning who you are, what you're capable of, having your best intentions for your child, and trying to filter out the noise of everybody else around you.
So good. All right. Almost just a couple more. Why? Let's keep it short because you're very eloquent and I love it. But all right, let's try and keep it short. Why is snowboarding so precious?
It's the connection to the community. Yeah, the community is so widespread. They speak the same language. You see somebody with a snowboard, you know that there's some type of connection, that passion to the outdoors, to sliding sideways. And it's some of my best friends I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, the belonging, isn't it? Yeah. Last one. What makes you excited about this winter?
I am just so excited to be able to ride powder and have. I've always been really excited about having a plan. I'm excited to just go with the flow and watch it snow and just embrace every day for what it is, because last year was really challenging, letting go of so much, that this year I just want to be accepting of whatever I can and however it looks.
Well, I'm very, very excited for you, and I'm sure it's going to be a good one in whatever shape or form. I know it's going to be great because you're ready for it. So
I'm ready.
Kimmy, thank you so much for being so open to share everything from the good stuff to the a bit more uncomfortable stuff. I think, as you said, it really is relatable and it really helps other people and other women. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being interested in sharing this story and having such great questions. It was so wonderful to communicate.